Hey everybody, today I want to talk about Nintendo closing its 3DS and Wii U eShops and what that means for gaming, retro gaming, game preservation, and digital games moving forward. Hey everybody, I am Robert Storms. If you guys are finding me for the very first time, please do me a massive favor. Hit that like and subscribe button. That way you guys can stay up to date on all future content here on the channel. So if you guys are unaware of what's actually going on, Nintendo announced that they're closing the 3DS and the Wii U eShops. And what does that really mean? And here's the thing. They say that if you're able to, like as long as you're still on that account, even when the eShops are closed, you can go back and re-download games that you already purchased. Now, a lot of people are saying, well, the Wii U didn't really sell that well anyway, so who cares about that? And then the 3DS wasn't one of the hottest selling systems, so who cares about that? To me, I think this is a route to a bigger problem. And it really comes to the game preservations. For an example, if I reach over here, I can pull out physical games, right? So in 20 years from now, I can pop these games in and still be able to play these games, right? These are games that I bought, that I own. I'm always going to be able to play these games. Same thing with like an Xbox or a PlayStation game. These are physical games that I bought that I'm able to play 20, 30, 40 years from now, as long as I still have those consoles. What's coming in and what's really bothering people and me, I don't own a Wii U. You know, I had a Wii U. I played it for a little bit, didn't really like it, ended up selling it. Same thing with the 3DS. Wasn't the biggest fan of those. And so yeah, maybe I shouldn't talk about this topic, but I think this is a route to a bigger problem leading in the future in this all digital age. Because what happens when physical media disappears, because all these companies want us to buy digital. It's easier for them. They don't have to print out the case, the paper, any of that stuff. They don't have to do any of that stuff. It's like, boom, they save money, they save in shipping costs and all that, and boom, it's right there. They make more money by going digital. All these companies want us to do that. And there's a lot of digital games I have on Steam and my PlayStation and Xbox. A lot of digital games. I still buy physical for those games I really, really want. But as we're going into the digital age, what's going to happen when PlayStation starts closing down stores and Microsoft starts closing down stores and all these companies starts closing down stores? What's going to happen to my PS3 collection if they close down the PlayStation 3 store? What's going to happen to my Xbox 360 collection and when they close down the Xbox 360 store? That's the problem. It doesn't feel like we own the games anymore. Now it just feels like we're renting these games. We're paying $60 to rent games. And I don't like that. I really don't like, that's not appealing to me. You know, say what you want. I can pull out a dusty ass NES cartridge from 1985 and 86, put it in my Nintendo, and I'll still be able to play this thing because I bought it physically. It's something I own. And now the biggest problem is Nintendo is closing these shops, but they're not offering their classic content in any other way. And that's the biggest problem. Nintendo doesn't want people to go and bootleg ROMs and all this stuff, but they're not offering you any other ways to play their games. And that's a big problem. It's like, here, we don't have a virtual console, but we have the Nintendo Online, the NSO, whatever the hell it's called, Nintendo Switch Online, and you can pay $30 a year to get access to the library of digital games, but you don't own these games, and you have to have the membership in order to play these games. And then a lot of the good retro games that we want to play aren't even available on the console. Like, it's just not available. If I want to play Metroid Zero, it's not available. Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance games aren't available. GameCube games aren't available on NSO. So you're getting rid of these eShops, but you're not giving us the ability to play these games. At least on the Wii U right now, you can go on there and you can download Metroid Zero Mission. You can download Metroid 2. Like, you can play these games on there. But Nintendo Switch and the Nintendo Switch Online doesn't offer you the ability to do that. So your only other choice now is to go out and buy the physical copies. Luckily for me, I own the physical copies. They're right there on my shelf, right? But they're ridiculously expensive. I was lucky enough to pick these games up when they weren't so expensive. But if someone wants to play the original Samus Returns and play it on the Game Boy, you have to own a Game Boy, Then you have to go find the game and add a cartridge. That game is like 30, $40. Just cartridge alone. That's not even including the box and manual and all that stuff. So Nintendo is not really giving us a liable source to go back and purchase these games by them closing the 3DS and Wii U eShops. And yes, I know the Wii U shop, the Wii U didn't sell well. Like that's not a secret, right? But what about people that do own it, that do still like playing those games and have a decent digital library, right? What's going to happen to those games? What happens if something happens to their account and they have to create a whole new account or something like that? Like your shop is not open for them to buy those games. Then they have to resort to go buy physical games. But a lot of the virtual stuff are classic games that people want. Maybe people don't want to sign up for Nintendo Switch Online. Maybe they want to have those games because they don't care about the 30 games you have. They just want that one game that you do not offer, and they want to play that game. Something like Metroid Zero Mission or something of that nature. Maybe they want to play some of these digital Game Boy games that they had on the virtual console that the Wii U and the 3DS offered that you don't offer on NSO. That is the biggest problem. So it's almost like Nintendo wants us to go bootleg and do these ROMs illegally because they're not giving us an actual source to actually go out and do this stuff the legit way. And I think that's the problem that's coming out. If you look at what PlayStation and Microsoft is doing, Microsoft, I think, has done the best job of trying to do game preservation to where the Xbox Series X plays a large amount of original Xbox, Xbox 360, Xbox One. It plays 4 different generations of Xbox games. PlayStation is doing their own thing where they're not doing backwards compatibility, but they have Project Spartan coming out, which is going to be like NSO, that's going to have a lot of backlogs of PlayStation 1, 2, 3, 4, PSP games, a lot of preservation there. So at least Sony is looking at it to do something where Nintendo, I just don't think they really care. To me, Nintendo is a lot like Disney. You know how Disney had, like back in the day, they're like, all right, we're going to put Beauty and the Beast on VHS. It's out of the vault. You can buy this movie. And then like 2 months later, it goes right back in the vault and you can't find that movie anywhere. Like it's just not available. To me, Nintendo constantly is doing that. By closing these shops and not making these games available, you're basically creating a increase in the retro market that doesn't need to be there because you own these games. You released the NES and the SNES classics. That's great. But even those were hard to find at first. I was lucky enough to get a couple of those. But even those don't have the larger majority of games that a lot of fans want. Yes, you can hack and stuff, but that gets into illegal territory. That's because Nintendo isn't allowing those games to be available, and that's what the biggest problem is going into the digital age, is we want to preserve these games. We want to preserve history. You don't have that problem in the music industry, in the movie industry. If one day when Blu-rays are completely disappeared, movies will be there digitally and you'll be able to find them, right? When movies went from VHS to DVD to Blu-rays, they constantly just took those movies and said, okay, that movie on VHS, we're going to re-release it on DVD. We're going to re-release it on Blu-ray. We're going to re-release it on 4K Blu-ray. And then you can find it digitally. Like you go to Amazon, iTunes, Vudu, any of these online things, you type in the movie you want, you have to rebuy it almost at the same price as it originally was released. But it's available to you. If I type in Mario RPG, it's not going to be available for me to purchase. It's not going to be like these games aren't available for me to purchase. If I want to play Pokemon Yellow on the NES or Nintendo Switch, it's not available for me to purchase. So where the music and movie industry has preservations of the movies and the movies keep going with the medium as it develops, video games aren't doing that. At least Nintendo isn't doing that. And that's a major shame because there are so many games that I want to play that I'm not available to play. I have to keep my PS3 because Blades of Time isn't backwards compatible on the other consoles. So many games that I want to play, whether it be, Remember Me or something like that, isn't available on current PlayStation consoles and they're not backwards compatible. So I have to keep my old systems in order to play these games. And I think that's the biggest problem that video games are having. The reason why people are so accepting to movies going all digital is because the movies we want are available. Whereas video games, they're not available. Like none of the games. Like if I want to play Darkwing Duck or Kung Fu from the original Nintendo, I have to own those games and own the consoles to play it on. Whereas in movies and music, the music and movies just keep going to the next medium. They transfer over. Video games aren't doing that, and that's the biggest problem with video games. You would have more people be accepting of the changes if those games were available. But no, we are forced to go out and buy physical copies of games because 10, 20 years from now, we want to be able to play the games that we still love. But if we go into an all digital future, what is the stop a company say we're shutting down the stores just like Nintendo's doing with the 3DS and Wii U and say we are no longer giving these out for availability. If you didn't download them or your account got messed up, those games are lost. That's the big problem. That's the big problem. And the video game market and these video game studios need to really focus on game preservation and allowing these games to be played, because not everybody has $300, $400, $500 to go drop on an Earthbound, physical copy. Yes, they just released it on Nintendo Switch Online, but what about all the other games that aren't yet released that people want to play, like Chrono Trigger and Metroid Zero Mission and Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow? That is the stuff that we were talking about. It's called game preservation. If the music and movie industry can do it, the video game industry needs to take note, because the video game industry is the most money-making industry, and they need to be able to have these games translate and transit into the next era of medium. But that's just my thoughts on it, guys. I want to know what you guys think. Be sure to leave those comments in the comment box below. Until next time, as always, I am Robert Storms, and that's my opinion.